exercise, you've got personality. And here's the instructions. Circle the number beside the word or phrase in each set of 4 that best describes you. So for number 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'll pick the one that best describes you, circle that number, and we'll move on to the next 4.
What if we have more than one? What if it's more than one?
No, you pick the one that is the most. Okay?
There's no flexibility in that.
All right. It'll work out.
It'll work out. It says indecisive.
Well, the other is. Okay, ready? Here we go. Which one of these best describes you? Only one. Are you a good delegator, a good encourager, a good listener, or a good worker? Which one of those best describes you? Circle that number.
It depends on the day.
Sir?
It depends on the day. That's a good line.
Can't copy each other's homework. Well, independent.
I can't answer.
Please do not copy your fellow students. They copied each other.
Copy me.
Chapter in trouble.
All right. Got that? Now one number circled out of the first set. Set number 2. Which one of these is most like you? Are you bold and daring, happy and carefree, pleasing and kind, or cool and distant? Circle the one of those that is the most like you. Okay?
I'm cool and daring.
Only one. 1, 2, 3, or 4. Don't worry about your neighbor. It's about you. Okay? Next set. Everybody caught? Everybody together on this? Next set. Which one of these 4 statements would you be the most likely to say? I will lead them. I will persuade them. I will follow through. I will get the facts. Circle the one of those that is the most like you.
Number 4.
For me?
All right? All right, down the line to the next set of 4. Circle the one of these that best describes you. Are you decisive, enthusiastic, a team player, or analytical? Okay? Circle the one of those that best describes you.
Can we have number 5, all of them?
We're going to get there. Okay?
What am I?
Everybody caught up? Everybody together? All right, the bottom of the line. These 4. Which one of these is the most like you? Are you competitive, optimistic, non-emotional, or conscientious? Circle the one of those 4 that is the most like you. Competitive, optimistic, non-emotional, conscientious. Which one of those 4 is the most like you? Okay? To the top of the next list.
You're lying.
Top of the next list, which one of these is the most like you? Are you a risk taker? Are you emotional? Are you steady? Or are you systematic? Circle one of those that is the most like you. Y'all are having too much fun.
I want to make up my own mind.
All right, moving down that line. Next set. Are you an innovator, a peacemaker, patient, or thorough? Which one of those 4 best describes you? Circle the number that best describes you.
Would you find a referee without being intimidated because of the results of peacemaker?
She's very certain that it's me.
All right. Innovator, peacemaker, patient, thorough. Next set. Are you direct? That means you don't beat around the bush and say what's on your mind. Are you direct, talkative, predictable, precise?
Just answer.
Choose the one that is the most like you.
All of the above?
Coming down the home stretch. Are you strong-willed, trusting, loyal, or cautious? Which one of those four is the most like you? Circle the one. All right? In this last set, none of these are complementary. So you have to choose the uncomplimentary one that is most like you. Are you domineering? Are you gullible? Are you too lenient? Or are you critical? Circle the one of those that is the most like you.
Item number 4.
Okay, if you have completed the exercise, you ought to have 10 circles on your sheet. One for each set of 4, right? 10 circles on your sheet. The numbers at the bottom of the page, 1, 2, 3, and 4, count up how many number 1s did you circle and put that in the blank beside number 1. How many number 2s did you circle? Put that in the blank beside number 2. How many number 3s did you circle? Put that in the blank by number 3. How many 4s? Put it in the 4 blank. Give you a minute to do that. Then we're going to try to figure out what in the world this has to do with anything. Okay? Get it done. As we say in Nashville, get her done. Get her done. Get her done. Had a guy that fainted. He was the groomsman. He was the groom, and he fainted at his wedding while I was doing the ceremony. And he was having a diabetic thing where he's on the floor. We were poking crackers and candy and orange juice and everything. He finally sat in a chair in front of the church. And I said, "You think you're ready now?" He said, "Yes, get her done." All right. So as you look at your totals, have you got them? You got your totals done, everybody? Yeah. Okay. You look at your totals. You got so many number 1s, so many number 2s, so many number 3s, so many number 4s. How many of you see that you have a lot of one number, more of one number than another? Okay. And some of you probably tied for the top with a couple of numbers, right? Got some of those too? Did anybody get all of one number? My wife is one of them. Okay. All right. So here's the next thing I want you to do. I want to arrange you in this room. So get ready to pack up what you got and move. I want to arrange you in this room. If your highest number is 1, I want to group you together. If your highest number is 2s, I want you sitting together. Highest number 3s, I want you sitting together. Highest number 4s, I want you sitting together. And here's where I'm going to put you. Okay? I want number 1s right up here in the front. Number 2s can go this table and that table. If they spill over in that one, that's okay. And number 3s in the back over here, and number 4s right here. 1s, 2s, 3s in the back, 4s in the front. Whatever you have. If you have a tie, just choose one. Just choose.
We're just getting real comfortable. I see with the 2 people.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hold on a second. I'm the only guy here.
Yeah, I know. That's okay.
3.
Okay, is this
What number is this?
2?
All right. This part, you're welcome to take notes, but I'm going to give you, I'm done with this session. I'm going to give you a summary of all we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes, okay? So you don't have to take notes if you don't want to right now. Just listen, okay? 1, 2, 3's in the back, 4's in the front. Ready? I'm going to tell you what I think I know about you based on where you're sitting. All right? I'm going to give you what I think are your characteristics. And what I'm going to share with you is not going to all hit exactly because since we only have one person that's all of one number, you're a blend. Okay? You're a blend of these different personality types. But you're going to find some of these things that fit you, okay? And what I'm going to share with you is comes out of a book called The Two Sides of Love by Gary Smalley and John Trent. And it basically used this four type personality system to help in marriage. And that's why I said this morning, wherever you are in life, if you're not a teacher, if you're married, wherever you are, this stuff is going to help you in life, this session right here. So let's go through this, and I'll talk about the number ones first, and you can tell me how close I'm getting to the real thing, and we'll compare this to the Trent and Smalley deal. Number ones they call lions. They're dominant personalities, okay? And they are natural take-charge leaders that some people don't want to lead. Tell me what to do and I'll do it, but please don't make me a leader. These guys, fine. I'll take it, I'll run, I'll lead, I can do it. Give it to me, I'm fine being a leader. They have a natural self-confidence about them, better than all the other groups, because it's called, in psychological terms, it's called ego strength. But it doesn't mean they're egotistical. It means they have a high thought for their own abilities, and they think if anybody can figure this out, I can figure it out. If anybody can get this done, I can get it done. I can figure out a way. Where other people feel defeated before they ever get started. These people have a natural self-confidence that's built in from the time they're born. And they are task-oriented people. Give me a job, give me a deadline, and I'll get there. You know, just let me know what you want the final product to look like, and I'll get there. You give me what I need to work, and I'll get the job done on your schedule because I'm task-oriented. Okay? That sounding like you guys at all yet? All right. Some more characteristics of the number one lions. They tend to be very straightforward. If they've got something on their mind, they'll tell you. You know, you don't have to worry about what they think of you or any other situation. They will usually speak their mind and tell you what they're thinking. They're straightforward. They typically don't care a whole lot about details. They would rather delegate the details out to somebody else. You know, I'll oversee it, you get that done. I don't want to fool with that. So they're typically good delegators because they're the big picture people, not the detail people. They tend to be extroverts rather than introverts. And let me explain quickly on this, and I'll do this for each group, whether you're an extrovert group or an introvert group. It has nothing to do with how much you talk. Being an extrovert means that you gain energy being around people. Okay? Being an introvert means that being around people drains your batteries. And you need, when you get done with people, you need some quiet time. Just to recover, because people drain you. You folks are extroverts, and it drains, it builds you up to be around people. You get excited being around people and gathering new ideas. You're natural born risk takers. Because you have a high self-confidence, it doesn't bother you to fail. It doesn't bother you to try something and it didn't work. Okay, it didn't work. We'll try something else. Others in this room, if you try something and fail, it just crushes you. Oh no, I'll never try anything again. But these folks have that natural ego strength, and it makes them natural risk takers. Hasn't been done before. We'll try it this way and see if it works. If it totally blows up, I just say, hey, I'm sorry, guys. We'll back up and we'll try something else. And you're okay. Okay? Can be confrontational. That, when they feel like they're having trouble getting their message across, they kind of get in your face. Or if they're trying to get a project done and you're on their team and you're not getting your part done, they will get confrontational with you to get you up to speed again. They tend to be opinionated folks. They have pretty strong opinions about everything that they believe. Sounded like you guys at all yet? Mm-hmm. Patience is not your strong suit. That you want it done yesterday. And not a lot of patience with piddling around and excuses and whatever else. On the downside, you can be controlling. You can come across as bossy sometimes because you're just really focused and really driven to get a job done. Now, that's the characteristics. Sound like you guys? Does it sound like them at all? You know them better than I do. Okay. Bible character, the Apostle Paul was this kind of person. He said, I'm going to get the gospel to every creature on the earth in my lifetime. Don't get in my way. I don't want to hear your whining, John Mark. Just get off the boat and go on home. You don't want to do this job? Fine, go. Anyway, he was just that way because he was so laser focused on the task at hand. And Sarah, Abraham's wife in the Old Testament, was one of those really strong personalities too. She almost seemed to overshadow him. Get that slave woman out of my house. So she's kind of take charge and get it done. What drives these people, the basic need that this personality has, is to feel respected. Don't really care whether you like me or not, but you better respect me for what I'm trying to accomplish. And if you don't like me, that's your problem. I'm okay with it. But you should respect me for my leadership and what I'm trying to do. That's the number one group. How are we doing? Are you half one of them?
Yes.
Okay.
Just do.
And typically, I don't have many of these. I've done it in churches all over the country. And typically, I might have one or two, maybe three in this group. This is a strong group, which bodes well for the church. You got a lot of leaders that aren't afraid to stand up and take charge and run. Okay. Let's go to number two, folks, in the back. Yeah, now the party starts. Trent and Smalley call the number two bunch otters. They are influencers. They love to influence other people. Okay? And kind of an entertainer type. All right, here's some of your characteristics. Naturally sociable people. They love to talk to anybody and everybody.
That's how.
Talk to strangers anytime, anywhere. That's my live session. Very, very easy, outgoing. Just enjoy being around people.
Is there a super otter?
Yeah. If you get 10 number twos, you're the super otter. They are natural born encouragers. That they have a knack for finding the good in people and being willing and eager even to comment on something. Hey, you did a great job with it. I loved what you did with your hair today. I get told that all the time. And, that dress looks so good on you. And they just love to compliment people all the time. They're always trying to find something good to encourage other people. They are team players. They love to be a part of a group. If you want to punish them, make them work alone. It's absolute punishment for these people. They want to interact with other people. They are natural-born peacemakers. That when they see friction developing between people, they'll jump in and say, hey, you guys, I see your side and I see your side, and you need to get together. Because they don't like that friction between people. They are persuasive people. And by that I mean, they love to try to talk people into whatever their point of view is. If they go to a good restaurant, they want to talk to everybody. Ooh, I ate at this place. You ought to go. Oh, I bought this kind of car. I love it. You ought to check it out. And so they become, that they in the secular world, they drift towards sales positions because it's a very people-oriented and persuasive-oriented kind of mindset, personality that they have. Let me get this out of here. Here we see the next 15 minutes. Okay. It's a preacher in Nashville. They tend not to be the most organized people in the world. They spend so much time talking and interacting with people. I know I've got that somewhere, but I don't know where it is. It's that kind of thing. But they're such people that they're not organizational people, typically. Where the number one lions will stand up and speak their mind, these people tend to be non-confrontational. They don't like to upset people, and it bothers them if they've accidentally made somebody mad, and they never go toward intentionally making somebody mad. So they want to keep the peace, and they avoid conflict. They are sensitive to peer pressure. They care what people think about them. Lions typically don't care. Take me or leave me, this is the way I am. Deal with it. It's your problem, it's not mine. These people care. If they find out you don't like them, it really hurts them. Because they like to be liked. And then I think we get to Bible characteristics. Bible character is Peter. The Apostle Peter is this kind of personality. He's a very people person. He speaks his mind. Sometimes he's right, sometimes he's not. But he's always talking to somebody about something. And he was influenced by peer pressure in eating with Gentiles. He was influenced by that to kind of cave in and not eat with Gentiles while the Jews were around. So their drive is that they need to be liked. Lions don't care, respect them. But these folks say, I want you to like me. I'm really working hard to be likable. Please like me. Okay, does that sound like you guys at all?
Yes.
No?
Yes.
Remember, you're a mix.
That's right.
Okay, and again, you're a blend of other things that are influencing this, so that all of these might not be getting. All right, you ready to move on to the number threes? All right, let's go to the number three folks in the back here. And Trenton Smalley called the number three folks golden retrievers. Oh, and they are the steady people of the world. They are the steady workers. They are the worker bees of the world. And they love stability. Don't rock my boat. I'm happy. Don't change, please. Leave things like they are. I like my stability. They are super dependable people, normally. That if a number three tells you they're going to do the job, you can take it to the bank. It'll get done. That there won't be any excuses. They'll find a way to do what they've committed to do because they're typically very committed people. And that's committed at church, committed at home, committed on the job, wherever they might be. And they love routine. Doing the same thing over and over again drives some of these people crazy, but they thrive on it. They like the routine. Got their same routine, do the same thing every way, every time, every day. Um, they they gravitate toward jobs that are more routine jobs. I always find a lot of school teachers in this group because, you know, it starts with a bell. You go to lunch at the same time every day. You got a bell to tell you you quit work, and it's very regimented. You know your schedule for the whole year, and you know when you're going to be off and everything. And the routines they love. And some of on the blue collar side, a lot of people will end up in factory work, where it's the same thing on an assembly line over and over again, and it doesn't bore them to death. They just find ways to get super efficient at doing it, and they enjoy finding the way to cut a corner and do it a little bit quicker. So they gravitate toward those kinds of jobs. They are loyal people. That if you got one of these for a friend, you really have to mess up to get them to turn on you. That they're very loyal to their church, very loyal to their family, very loyal to friends. They tend to be very orderly people. That everything has a place, and you know, if you use my stuff, put it back where you got it. And the number 2 folks, put it where it's going to, I won't be able to find it anyway. They are typically predictable people that talking about going out to eat after church on Sundays. If you've got a number 3 spouse who's going to be a little late getting there, you can order for them because they're going to order what they always get. You know, every time it's the same thing. And you know, there's no, I might look at a menu, but I'm not, you know, I'm going to eat the same thing I always eat unless I mess it up so bad I can't eat it anymore. So they're very predictable in everything that they do because they're in a routine. You know where they are at this time of day and this time. You know how they like things because they're predictable. They love controlled environments. Makes sense. They tend to be introverted. These 2 groups tend to be extroverted, get energy being around people. These 2 groups tend to be introverted, which means that do fine around people, but when I'm done, I'm done. That I need you to leave me alone for a little while. I need you to sit here. You be quiet when you watch TV. You know, it's that kind of thing. So they're introverted. They tend to be very careful people. They're not risk takers. That they're very, very careful. They think through what they're going to do before they do it. They don't just jump and do it. They're very careful. And another couple here. Obviously don't handle change well. That if you're going to change something in their environment, at home, at church, at work, you really got to take your time with these folks. Because whatever it is, even if it's a change for the better, it's not good, I don't like it. They have to kind of be sold and given a chance to process through the change before they will accept it. You put them under a lot of pressure, you can't get them in your face like these folks. They will clam up. You can't get a good argument going with them. If it gets heated, if the debate gets strong, they just will be quiet. Or they'll say, we'll talk about this later when you calm down. And that's more their personality. They don't like this out of control stuff because they like things under control and predictable. The Bible character, Abraham of the Old Testament, very much this steady, plodding along, following God, not a whole lot of excitement going on, just doing my thing, being faithful to God, trying to find wherever that place is He wants me to live, and just keep going. And what drives these people is the need to feel safe. That I don't like my life in chaos. I need a safe place to be, and that's what they're always looking for in their lives. Does that sound like you guys at all?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
I agree.
All right. Let's come to the number 4 group up front, and they are beavers, and they are compliant. I think they gave them the beaver characteristic because Beavers are going to build dams. I mean, the floods come through and tear the dam down, and they'll just go right back to rebuilding the dam. They're going to do their thing by the book because we're beavers. This is what beavers do. We build dams, and so they're very compliant. They love accuracy. That if things aren't just exactly the way they ought to be, they catch typos. They catch a penny off in a bank statement. They catch every little detail because it's important for them. If you're going to say it, you better be accurate about it. They tend to be very detailed people, where this side of the room is not so much detail. Y'all are detailed in the threes, but not as much as the fours. The fours are really in detail. And they tend to get jobs that aren't overseeing a big picture job, but they're drilling down deep in a job. That's very specific and very complex, and that's the kind of stuff that they love. It's that detailed stuff that requires a lot of accuracy. That's kind of where they gravitate. They like to follow instructions. If you give them a job, they'll ask you a million questions. Can I do this? Do I have that? They'll want to get everything lined out before they ever start to hit a lick on the job. Because they're wired toward following instructions. So they want to get all the instructions up front before they start to work. If you've ever put together a gas or a charcoal grill, anybody ever done that? You got the instructions in the back. These are the only people that read are the number fours. Everybody else just starts putting the thing together. And it opens sideways, you know what's happening. But these people actually read the instructions. They tend to be very analytical. They're analytical in the detail of whatever they're doing. They're analytical about the people. Well, I heard him say this, but I'm not sure. Did he mean this or that? So they're analyzing all the time, trying to figure out the deeper meaning of things. They are task-oriented. The people in the front, the ones and the fours, are task-oriented. Give me a job and I'll get it done. The people in the back are people-oriented. That, hey, I don't want to offend anybody along the way. We might not get the task done on time, but we'll all be happy when we get there. And if you got a problem with that, move up to the front table. So it kind of works that way. These people, you give them a task, and they will get all over these people. Hey, I got a deadline here. We got to get this done. Quit your talking and do your work. And so this side of the room we got extroverts. This side of the room we got introverts. The front half of the room we got task-oriented. The back half of the room we got people-oriented. And you wonder why we have so much trouble getting along. It's crazy. These folks are also introverted. Tend to be very, very cautious. If the fire alarms were to go off in this building right now, I would forget about all of you. Because by the time you analyze the situation, I'm following a line. A line's going to make a decision and get out of here, and I'm behind them. So tend to be very cautious. Really logical thinkers for the most part. That they like sequential things, and they like to figure out the best way to get things done, and to figure out the logic behind why it's done this way or not done this way. And they tend toward perfectionism. That they're not happy until it's perfectly right. A lot of people can be happy at 80% right, 90% right, 95% right. These people worry about the last 1%. It's all got to be right. All right. And they gravitate toward jobs that are very detail specific. Bank tellers, accountants, engineers, computer programmers, that kind of job that requires a lot of detail. They love them. Because they're so detail-oriented, they often miss the big picture. It's hard for them because they're drilling so deep in what they're in that they don't worry about the fact that, hey, I'm holding up the whole project that everybody else is working on because I'm drilling so deep right here. And, you know, I'm not moving on until I get to the bottom of this well I'm digging. And so, you know, it's hard for them to get the grasp of the big picture sometimes. And they stuff emotions. And sometimes it's not as much as stuffing emotions as they just don't show up. That you don't know, you know, am I getting through to you? Are you understanding? Do you love me? Do you hate me? It's really hard to tell a lot of times by looking at the number 4 group because they just don't show up. Okay? They're very reserved in the way they express their emotions. Bible character is Moses. You know, when God called Moses in the burning bush and told him, I want you to go back to Egypt and bring my people out of bondage, what did Moses do? He had a million questions. Hey, I need all the details before I go anywhere. You know, what's your name? You know, I'm really not the right guy. You know, and he doesn't want to be a leader. He give me the detail part, and I'm happy to follow. But that's Moses. And what drives these people is the need to be right. That if you want to crush them, tell them that they've come to a wrong conclusion about whatever. Okay? I mean, it crushes them. If they have done a thorough investigation and they think this is right, and they turn out to be wrong, not pretty. Okay? That sounds like you guys are.
And then for risk-taking, if I am out of here, he would be trying to figure out where it's coming from.
All right. So,
Is all, I really missed it, but is all this based on a book that you...
yes,
What's
the 2 Sides of Love
Okay,
by Trent and Small.
The 2 sides of love.
And it's based, some of you in business might have taken a test that's been around forever. It's called the DISC, D-I-S-C test. And it's, you know, it's the same thing. The D is the dominant, the I is the influencer, the S is the steady, C is compliant. It's the same thing. It's just a very condensed version of that I did for this. And I usually just in these 10 questions where the regular test is a whole lot longer, I pull the meat out of the test and give it here, and it's usually pretty accurate. So, and for time's sake, that's what we do. Okay? And like I say, I've got a handout up here that you can have after that gives all these characteristics that I just gave you of each of the 4. And hopefully you can understand a little bit more about that. Now I want you to go back to your note-taking sheets. And if you want to move back to where you were, you're welcome to. You can take notes where you are. Whatever you want to do, just do it quickly. Okay? So we're on session 2 now, so obvious facts about personality. I want to bring this into the Bible class and see what this means to us in Bible strategy. Okay? So, get ready to take notes on your note-taking sheet.
It's funny because Pat, did you want to sit down because the shirts? Because I just
It's kind of weird. Is kind of occupational.
All right, everybody settled in? Here we go, we're going to take notes. Some obvious facts about personality. What does all of this that we've just gone through mean for you as a Bible school teacher? Here it goes. God has made all of these different personalities. This is not a mutation. If you happen to be a number 4, you didn't mutate into that. It used to be, your ancestors long ago were number 1s, and then things went wrong in the genetic pool, and you ended up a number 4. No, God made all of these different personality types, and they're all equal in God's sight. Okay, so God wired us up the way we are with the personalities that we have. Second thing is God can use all of these different personalities. That God doesn't say, man, those number ones and number twos, I get a lot out of them. Number threes and number fours, I can't figure them out. I can't figure out how to motivate them. You know, God can use all of these different personalities. And He even, what amazes me, He uses them as leaders. You would think all the leaders God would choose would be number one lion. But He chose number one lion, Paul, to be a leader. He chose number two, Peter, to be a leader of the first century church. He chose number three, Abraham, to be the father of his people. He chose a number four, Moses, to lead his people out of Egyptian bondage. So not only can God use all of these personalities, God can even use these different personalities to be leaders, but you will lead in different styles. And I think it's, looking at the church, I think it's healthy to have elders who come out of these different groups because they balance each other out. That if all of your elders came out of the number one group, you'd be running down the road so far that you'd be throwing people, you'd be leaving people, throwing them off the bus, as you went. If they all came out of number four, you would be in meetings forever and never make a decision. and so it's good that we pick leaders out of all of these different styles and we understand each other. And some push a little bit and some know when to pull back a little bit. And the job gets done. It's not always pretty, but it gets done. So the balance, I think, is part of God's design. And we naturally kind of gravitate toward opposites as we choose mates in life. We don't usually choose somebody who's a clone. We choose somebody whose strength is different from my strength. And it helps balance me out in my marriage. So it's the way it goes. God can use all of these different personalities. Your personality will affect your teaching. That whatever way God has wired you up is going to influence the way you really enjoy teaching. That if you're a detailed number four person and a teacher, you're going to want to study and study and study and drill deep and get into the classroom and say, y'all be quiet, I got some good stuff to tell you for the next 45 minutes. And that's the way you're going to want to teach. And if you're number two back there who loves the interaction, it's going to be, hey, I want everybody participating. I want everybody speaking up. I want everybody to tell me what they feel. And that's going to be your teaching style, naturally. Okay? And so it is for all of us. That we're going to be influenced to teach according to the personality that God has wired up in us. Okay? So your personality is going to affect the way you naturally like to teach. And finally, I think this is no, yeah, I got to look. Not finally. Your personality will affect your learning. That because of the way God has wired your personality, it's going to affect the kind of class you like to be in. Okay? That you're a detailed person, you're happy to sit and listen to an expert talk. If you're a people person, you want to have a chance for interaction. So it's going to affect the way you learn, and not only the way you learn, but the way your students learn. Okay? Because they're not all the students in your class are not going to be your personality. You don't say, hey, all the number ones, we're going to this classroom over here and study the Bible. All you number twos go over there. It doesn't work that way. And it kind of does in the adult class in larger churches. It's kind of the way it works. That you get to pick the small discussion class over here, and you get the auditorium class where you listen to a lecture, and you get to choose. When you're in the third grade, you're in Miss Susie's class, and you don't have a choice. So it gets more complicated for the children than it does for us as adults, especially in a larger church. Now this is fine. Your students have different personalities too, and I've already said that. You're as varied as you are, just in this room. The students in your classroom are just as varied. They're just as different. If you can give this little test, and you'll be able to do it in your mind, for little kids, for adults, for teens, whatever, you'll be able to do this test in your mind, that you'll say, ooh, I understand now why this activity didn't work for that person. They're not wired that way. And I understand why this really perks their coffee. And this is really what they like. And you know, it just, they got all fired up when we started doing that in class. And now I understand because it's their personality type. Okay, let's move on a little more here. We complicate this personality thing by three major learning styles, and you guys have probably heard this at some point in your training for whatever. Three major learning styles. Auditory, you learn best if you hear it. And stuff like, you can spot auditory learners by time on the telephone, talking to other people, discussion, classes, listening to music. A dead giveaway on these people is that if when they're reading something to themselves, they move their lips, they're trying to sound it out where their ear can hear it. And it's not audible, but it's going through the audible process in their mind so that their ear can hear it and they can learn it. Second, there's some of the things real quick, what auditory learners love: verbal presentation, storytelling, discussion, question and answer sessions, videos, and reporting. People doing reports, reporting to the class. These kind of things work well for the auditory learner. And again, on these learning styles, we're a blend of these as well. But we probably have a major style that works best for us. Okay. You copied enough of that? Let's go on to second major learning style is visual. And we can get the list up there for that. Charts, graphs, diagrams, videos, handouts, things that they can see make an impression more than things that they hear. So a lot of visual cues help fasten things in the mind. The third major learning style is kinesthetic tactile. Kinesthetic tactile. Kinesthetic has to do with moving around. You can get a degree in kinesiology. It's how the body moves, without breaking stuff. And so kinesthetic is moving around. Tactile is using the senses, especially the sense of touch. And there's some people that just learn better this way. Let me see if we got a list here. I do. Group exercises, simulations, role play, group activities, practice, things that get you up and get you moving around, or things that have a project involved in it, a hands-on project, works for these people. Okay? So these are the three major learning styles. Now, let's take it another step further. These learning styles change with age. That whatever your major learning style is now, chances are that it's not what it's always been. This comes from a study by Price, Dunn, and Dunn. Most preschool children their best way of learning is kinesthetic tactile. If you've raised any children, got any grandchildren running around, you know that you better keep your eye on them because they're moving all the time. And wherever they're moving, they're touching everything they get their hands on. And whatever they touch goes in their mouth. Okay? And it's the way they explore their world. That they have to move all over the place and explore everything and touch everything that you leave within their reach. But when we move into the elementary age, most children become their highest means of learning is visual. And that's where reading and writing come in. If you go into the public schools and and look at the classrooms. Usually classroom walls are just covered with colorful material. You know, the ABCs in color and all kinds of posters. Everything colorful, visually grabbing, because that's the best way elementary kids typically learn. Okay? But when we move into adulthood, well, let's do teens first. Teenagers typically move into a stage of their best learning style is auditory. They learn best by what they hear from everybody except their parents. It's why music becomes a big thing to the teen generation. Whatever that generation's music is a big deal. The music that I like to listen to today is the same music that I liked when I was a teenager. I just went to had an uncle pass away just a couple of months ago. He was 96 years old, I think he was, and funeral home, and everybody got quiet, and you know they typically play, some kind of. He was a member of the church, and typically play some kind of a cappella. God be with you till we meet again, and it's playing over the speakers. And but this one started out with Boogie Woogie Bugle Boy from Company B, and that's big band music. But that was the music of his day, and that's what his kids wanted to play at his funeral because that's what he loved. So we tend to love the music that was important to us in our auditory learning years, which are those teen years. So most teens, auditory learners, they love their music, they love talking on the phone, and now it's texting. I don't know what that's done, but it used to be when I was a kid. I never talked on the phone until I became a teenager. Then I wanted to talk on the phone all the time until I got out of being a teenager. Then I don't want to talk on the phone anymore. So I went through the phase, and everybody kind of tends to go through that phase where in the teen years, they become good auditory learners. How does this all shake out in adulthood? Where do we end up? Here's what the study says. Once we become adults, 40% of all adults, their best learning style is vision. 40% of all of us as adults learn better if we can see it. I am the world's worst on somebody trying to give me directions to drive someplace. Just write it, Dad. Draw me a map. And sometimes if people are giving me all these instructions, I just have to get my ink pen out and just draw it on my hand. Okay, turn left. I don't care about the big White House on the right-hand side. I don't care. Just give me a map that I can see, and I'm there. But tell me, and it just, it's gone. Because I'm not an auditory learner. I'm a good visual learner. So 40% of us as adults, our best learning style is visual. And another 40% of all adults, their best learning style is kinesthetic tactile. Does that surprise you? Yeah. And of this number, there are more men than there are women in that 40%. Kinesthetic tactile learners. And that leaves 20% of all adults, their best learning style is auditory, and of this number, there are more women than there are men. What do we do a good job at in our churches for adults?
Can you come again with the last group?
The last group is 20% of all adults are auditory learners, and of that 20%, more of them are women than men. More women are auditory learners than men. So wives, do you think your husband doesn't listen to you? You're right. It's just not the way we operate. Sorry. Just talk all you want to. We don't hear it. Draw a map. Draw a map. And we're there. But talking. It does work.
You're getting us in trouble.
Well, at least they know, they know who we are now, so maybe they can adapt and figure out how to teach us. There's still hope. So looking at our adult education, how are we doing on these three? How are we doing on reaching auditory learners, visual learners, kinesthetic, tactile learners?
It's all talking.
Huh?
It's all talking.
It's a whole lot of talk. Yeah. And where do we meet for worship? In an auditorium. Imagine. What are you supposed to do in an auditorium? You're supposed to sit and listen. And is it any wonder that men aren't good at that? Is it any wonder that every church I've ever been in my life has more women than men? We're speaking women's language. Auditory. And we're not speaking the language of most men.
Well, that's why we have these things now.
What?
That's why we have the thing at the front with it all written out.
It helps. The PowerPoint helps put the visual back in there,
Everybody's,
where we didn't have that for years. You'd have when I was a kid, we would have evangelists come in from out of town that would do sheet sermons. Did you ever get sheet sermons up here, where they get a bed sheet and have the sermon outline on a bed sheet and tack it to the wall over the baptistry and run through this sheet? They'd have a stick and be slapping that sheet the whole time, telling you Bible verses and going in. And that was our PowerPoint when I was growing up. That was it. Okay? And that was only one time a year. No regular preacher did that. They just taught. Okay? And there's value in all of these three types. But if you want to get everybody, you got to figure out, is what I'm doing reaching auditory, visual, kinesthetic, tactile learners? And it's really hard in our auditorium settings to get kinesthetic, tactile. And it's even harder if you've got cues. At least you've got some flexibility with chairs. If you decided to do something different, to give people a chance to have a little more interaction, you could. In pews, you just can't do that at all. You got to face the front and look at the back of somebody's head. And it's not always the greatest method for learning. I used to think in every church that I was ever a part of, I would be amazed at the people who could make it about 10 minutes into a sermon and they had to go to the bathroom. And I'm thinking, you're a grown man. Can't you figure out how to go to the bathroom before the sermon starts? But it wasn't that they had kidney problems or bladder problems. It was they were kinesthetic, tactile learners, and they had to get up and move. And they could sit there about 10 minutes, and it was over. And they'd wander around in the foyer or something, and if you had speakers, they would listen, but they could not sit and listen that much longer. They're not wired that way. So that's what we've got. That's what we've got to try to figure out how to deal with in our education program for adults. Yes?
What about like to hear it, see it, and write it?
Yeah. I'm going to get that in the third session. I'm going to wrap up with some stats on that. But that is a way that you start, the more you can combine these different learning styles so that it's not all one way, the bigger the impact on the learning is. But I'll hit that in the last session. Anything else before we take another break?